Göbekli Tepe was not built by civilization. It was the requirement that forged it. Stone does not invite interpretation. It accepts pressure, or it breaks. On a limestone ridge in southeastern Anatolia, bedrock was cut not for shelter, not for storage, and not for defense, but for alignment. Mass was measured, weight was anticipated, surfaces were shaped where hands would never linger. This ground holds no trace of homes, no permanent hearths, no cultivated fields, and yet stone was raised here, deliberately, into forms that demanded coordination, repetition, and endurance beyond seasonal survival. Göbekli Tepe does not sit at the beginning of civilization. It exists before it, fully organized. The plateau surrounding the site offers little margin. Thin soil clings to exposed limestone. Seasonal grasses vanish under heat. Water pools briefly, then disappears. This landscape does not invite permanence. It tolerates presence only briefly, then withdraws support. The bedrock itself became the quarry. Extraction began where stone already strained against the surface. Natural fissures were widened using percussion alone. Basalt hammerstones show impact scarring consistent with repeated controlled strikes, not brute fracture. Chert tools, refined edges where sockets required precision. The quarry pits remain visible today. Shallow depressions cut directly into the ridge, each matching the rough dimensions of the finished pillars. Stone was not transported from elsewhere. The builders removed mass from the earth and repositioned it within meters. This minimized distance, not effort. Each T-shaped monolith weighs up to 16 metric tons, 5 meters tall, balanced on narrow bases. Moving one required sustained force, not moments of effort, but extended coordination across uneven ground. Calculations suggest teams of 50 to 100 adults, maintaining tension simultaneously, controlling momentum without mechanical advantage. No metal, no wheels, no draft animals. Ropes were fiber. Leverage was stone and wood. Timing was everything. Stone resists haste. It yields only to patience and repetition. What this required was not strength alone, but discipline. Muscle can lift once. Systems lift repeatedly. Each movement had to be anticipated before it occurred. Rope tension could not fluctuate. Footing could not fail. Momentum had to be controlled before it became destructive. Hands burned against fiber. Feet slipped on limestone dust. In experimental reconstructions, even minor misalignment causes a pillar to shear sideways or bury itself into soil. Recovery is nearly impossible. Failure here was not instructional. It was terminal. And yet the work continued. Not once, not briefly, but across generations. This implies more than cooperation. It implies transmission. Knowledge had to persist beyond individual memory. Techniques had to be repeated precisely, without accumulation of error. No marks were written, no plans were drawn. The system lived in practice, in timing, in posture, in sequence. People arrived already knowing where to stand, when to pull, when to wait. This was not spontaneous gathering. It was scheduled return. Scheduled return does not emerge accidentally. It requires shared expectations that extend beyond kinship. Groups arriving from different territories had to agree on timing, on sequence, on resuming work already aligned. Missed arrivals would stall progress. Partial attendance would collapse tension systems. Late return would undo measurements already set. Time itself became a constraint. Seasons were not markers. They were limits. Migration cycles, herd movement, weather windows. These had to be synchronized across groups who did not live together and did not answer to a central authority. No enforcement is visible in the record. No weapons cached, no fortifications raised. Compliance emerged from continuity. If you arrived, others arrived. If you returned, work resumed. This is not hierarchy, it is protocol. Long before written law, agreement governed action. The stone did not command obedience. Participation did. And once a system like this exists, absence carries cost. Missed work delays completion. Delayed completion wastes prior labor. Reliability becomes value. The earliest political currency here was not power. It was presence. Radiocarbon dating anchors. The earliest structures, Layer 3. To the pre-pottery Neolithic A period, roughly 9,600 to 8,800 BCE. This predates fired ceramics, it predates metallurgy, it predates domesticated grain. The builders moved with herds. Their subsistence relied on gazelle, wild cattle, gathered seeds, and seasonal abundance. Mobility defined survival. Nothing in their material record suggests long-term surplus. Toolkits remain portable, settlements remain temporary, and yet, labor converged. Groups returned repeatedly to the same ridge, to measure, to align, to resume work already begun. Lithic sourcing confirms movement across wide catchment zones. Distance mattered less than commitment. Construction followed sequence. Central pillars rose first, locked into sockets carved directly into bedrock. These sockets were not approximate. Their dimensions match pillar bases precisely, limiting lateral movement once upright. Peripheral uprights followed, placed at regular intervals along circular walls. Dry stacked stone filled the gaps, distributing weight outward, rather than downward. Verticality here was engineered. Weight was anticipated. Failure was mitigated. These were not stacked stones. They were fixed systems. The enclosures did not expand organically. They followed proportional rules. Stone tolerates no improvisation at this scale. Each pillar shares a consistent form, T-shaped, abstracted human proportions. Arms carved along the sides, hands meeting at the waist. Faces remain absent. The carvings do not merely decorate. They assert foxes, snakes, scorpions, birds, boars, rendered in low relief, with standardized proportions and repeated orientations. The same motifs appear across multiple enclosures, independent of local prey availability. These images do not track diet, they track meaning. Placement obeys spatial logic, balance, opposition, repetition. Meaning here is structural, rather than illustrative. Stone absorbs intention slowly, but it remembers precision. The enclosures contain no domestic residue, no sustained ash layers, no grinding floors, no storage pits. Instead, the fill contains bone, thousands of fragments. Cut marks cluster tightly in time. Burn patterns indicate mass roasting, not daily consumption. Fracture patterns suggest marrow extraction performed rapidly. The volume exceeds household scale by orders of magnitude. This was accumulation, not subsistence. Feeding a workforce of this scale introduces a different problem. Daily foraging cannot support synchronized labor. Hunting had to be timed. Transport coordinated. Distribution immediate. Failure here would not mean hunger tomorrow. It would mean lost labor today. Feasting was not celebration. It was infrastructure. Shared consumption ensured equal participation. Equal participation ensured return. This is where surplus first appears, not as stored grain, but as organized excess. Food became a binding agent. Continuity was the objective. Surplus existed only long enough to sustain effort, then vanished. Which explains why it leaves so little trace. This is not an economy of accumulation. It is an economy of renewal. Göbekli Tepe was not built because society had already advanced. Society advanced because the requirements here exceeded basic survival. Ritual did not emerge from surplus. Surplus emerged under pressure to sustain ritual. Constraint produced continuity. Construction continued across centuries. Enclosures vary in scale, refinement, and technique, indicating adaptation rather than stagnation. Later phases reduce pillar size. Walls become thicker. The system simplifies. Knowledge persisted beyond individual lifespans. Measurement mattered. Alignment mattered. Sequence mattered. This persistence required memory embedded in practice. Labor did not arrive randomly. It returned on schedule. Then, the process reversed. The enclosures were not abandoned. They were buried. Burial at this scale is not abandonment. It is administration. Leaving the pillars standing would invite reuse. Reuse would fracture alignment. Fracture would dissolve meaning. The fill was deliberate, layered, controlled. Ending a system requires as much coordination as sustaining one. Knowledge was retired. Roles dissolved. Return was prevented. Otherwise, obligation would persist. The builders sealed the site, not because it failed, but because it succeeded beyond what mobility could support. Burial preserved form, while releasing commitment. It was not loss. It was transition. Stratigraphy shows consistent layering rather than collapse. The effort required matched construction itself. Pillars were not toppled. They were entombed. No trauma patterns suggest invasion. No climatic proxies demand evacuation. No fire layers indicate destruction. Function ended. Structure remained. Preservation followed, unintentionally. Continuity demanded a different solution. Grinding stones increase in nearby settlements. Mobility decreases. Wild cereals show early signs of management. The organized labor once devoted to stone found new utility. The demands that sustained the system exceeded movement alone. The system did not vanish, it migrated. Stone did not invent agriculture. Pressure, discipline, and the need for continuity did. Modern excavation stabilizes what ancient hands locked into place. Steel frames prevent collapse. Sensors monitor humidity and stress. Preservation now operates under the same constraints as construction. Material limits, redundancy, tolerance for failure. The effort required to protect the site echoes the effort that created it. Göbekli Tepe does not demonstrate belief as origin. It demonstrates organization before settlement. Hierarchy did not wait for cities. It imposed them. Once systems like this exist, they do not disappear. They change form. Stone remembers this, longer than language ever could. The site offers no origin myth, no declaration, only mass, arranged against gravity. Civilization was not a moment. It was a consequence. Long before walls enclosed people, people enclosed stone.